you can only take responsibility for yourself. So your job, man or woman, is to remove the bricks from the wall the best you can. Now, they might not allow it. You know, they might still stack bricks. They might want to throw contempt at you and make you want to put more bricks in. Your job is to be your best. People getting divorced,
tearing their families apart, coasting through marriage,
or fighting their way through it. I'm Cass.
And I'm Kathryn.
We came back from the depths of hell to save our abusive, our toxic marriage.
We're MorrowMarriage.
Let's flip divorce statistics with the new marriage. All right, let's talk about stonewalling or shutting down. Stonewalling is the third horseman.
I don't know if they're numbered, but it's one of the four horsemen.
It's the third one I talk about when I teach.
Right.
Right. And I group stonewalling and shutting down together. You like to separate them a bit, correct?
There is some definition there that I would say we could get into for sure.
Okay, let's get into it. So, you know, this came from one of our followers asking the question, what do I do when my husband withdraws? And I just really firmly believe that this goes both ways big times. I can give you so many stories about men who are so beaten down by their wives or so afraid that she's going to be angry, or it's just sad, lonely, isolated, feeling lonely because they're not physically intimate. Like there's so many various degrees to this where they will potentially just shut down. They won't want to come home from work, right? She could make a comment or a bid, physical touch even. He's pulling back. She could initiate sex. He pulls away. Certainly with fighting, just shut down, not want to have a conversation anymore. What about your women?
I think stonewalling happens quite often on both sides. So women tend to be a little bit less aggressive in general. I don't know if that's like in the world, but certainly the women that I work with are less aggressive than their spouse. Mm-hmm. But I do have women that are more aggressive than their spouse. But stonewalling is a way to cope. So stonewalling could be shutting down on purpose, or it could be actually sort of dissociating. So you could be purposefully ignoring, not making eye contact. That would be considered stonewalling. But also you could get flooded. And so becoming flooded is a physiological response to overwhelming emotions. And that means you can actually physically tell when you're flooding, because your palms might sweat, your heart might race, your pulse is elevated, and you need to do a minimum of 20 minutes of square breathing or relaxation exercises in order to get your body back down to baseline. So flooding can also look like stonewalling. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to make sure that people know when you're shutting down, it doesn't necessarily mean, or when your partner is shutting down, doesn't necessarily mean your partner is shutting down on purpose. I know that there were times where I would shut down because I would become flooded. I would become frozen. Mm-hmm. The whole fight, flight, or freeze. And fawn. Freeze is you could literally be frozen. You could be flooded. And when you're flooded, you don't have access to the pieces of your brain that you need to have a beneficial conversation in this time. And so if that's you're not necessarily stonewalling, but you're becoming flooded, and you need to learn how to ask your partner for a break. If you recognize flooding in your partner, same thing. You need to be able to let your husband or your wife know that you're recognizing maybe some flooding. Don't just assume that it's one of the four horsemen, because being flooded is not completely outside of your control. You can try to help yourself not get flooded so easily, but when you get flooded, you're flooded.
Yeah, what I do, like I teach my men, safe reaction is to keep yourself safe, and the F stands for fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And so it's not like, so what Kathryn just said, you want to start becoming hyper aware. If you think back to me getting over anger, and anger management not really working. If you think about the narcissism stuff we talked about in the previous episode, like at the end of the day, it's all about becoming self-aware, right? This would also be something like feelings. What am I actually trying to feel? All of this is self-awareness. And so I'll never forget the very first time. So we had like an explosive 3 days, I think. I'm just saying 3 days because it was so often 3 days or a week back then. But I remember being in the sunken living room and you said, I'm going to make you some dinner, or here's your lunch or something. I don't remember the thing. And I was like blown away. The reason that I think this is significant is because I believe that with stonewalling and shutting down, a lot of my men, they purposefully ditch out on their responsibilities. Do you remember your response?
So, well, I still want to make dinner for you. This is something that I
still your
like
wife.
to do. I'm still your wife.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
still your wife. And I think it's so important because, and I'm not sure, this could probably tie into the she uses sex as a weapon and all this stuff. No, like at the end of the day, I'm not sure about how many women you talk to about this, but the men that have been through the program that pull back on their responsibilities and completely shut down, pull away, stop initiating conversations, like when I talk about my rejection ladder and things like that, where they have to be on the ladder to work their way up because they're shutting down and hiding. I want to hear your take on shutting down, hiding who you are, being afraid, unapologetically, confidence. Does that tie into it for you?
I never really thought of it that way. If I think about shutting down, I think sometimes when the way you're describing, they pull back, I think there's fear there. There's insecurity there. So they don't want anything to lead to more disappointment. In that case, if you're pulling back and pulling away because you're fearful of disappointing the other person, being a disappointment to yourself, you start to mute who you are as a person. So you said you're not unapologetically yourself anymore because there's like a cloud of fear that's surrounding your actions or your lack of actions, whatever that is. So I never thought of stonewalling and shutting down being connected to that. But if you are, depending on why you're shutting down, if you're shutting down maliciously, you're pulling back because I'll show her or I'll show him. I don't
Which
want to.
I did a lot of
You
that.
did that a lot. That's very purposeful stonewalling. If you're doing that, I mean, on the receiving end of that, and I know this isn't the question you asked, but you still need to show up as the woman or the man that you're supposed to be. If your partner is stonewalling and building this wall between you, a stone wall, if you will.
That's why they say it, stonewall.
You still need to continue to do your own work. And we can't really speculate. If you're not connected to your partner, you can't speculate why your partner is stonewalling, because is it out of fear? Is it out of resentment? Where is it? And most of the time when you have this horseman creep into your relationship, you do not have the level of connection that you need to have. And that's what we often do. We speculate. I'm just going to move into another horseman just for a quick second.
Sure.
So the worst of the four horsemen and the biggest indicator of divorce is contempt. And when contempt is used, what I teach my women is that when your husband comes at you with contempt, my instruction, and I didn't make this up, I think it was the Gottmans, find the message behind the contempt, because the horseman that you're looking at is going to distort what's actually happening. So the same thing would happen with stonewalling. If contempt is going to cause you to become defensive or cause you to maybe even stonewall, contempt is going to cause another reaction. Stonewalling could do the same thing. Stonewalling is just more mild because it's not an attacking horseman. It's a withdrawing horseman. But you're still going to speculate what's happening, which is going to cause another emotion. And rather than allowing that emotion to take control, you really do need to recognize that you need to be connected to your partner. Now, that stone wall is going to make it very difficult. But the goal is to get through that wall.
So the way that I would teach, and you would probably have something similar, just we would talk about it totally differently, but you can only take responsibility for yourself. So your job, man or woman, is to remove the bricks from the wall the best you can. Now, they might not allow it. They might still stack bricks. They might want to throw contempt at you and make you want to put more bricks in. Your job is to be your best.
Which I think would allow them to remove their own bricks.
That's the point.
Rather than removing the bricks for them, when you show up, which is what I just described, you continue to be your best self. You continue your growth. You try to see the message behind the contempt rather than reacting to the contempt. You recognize the stonewalling, but you still be your loving, empathetic self. That will influence your partner to take one stone down at a time.
Yeah, I teach in my course, like in the first module, it's you stop putting bricks in the wall. And then in the second module, it's where you stop putting the massive bricks, because it's all about communication and feelings and letting her feel. Ideas to get her to want to take bricks out, right? Or him, yeah. But the point is, of course, that your partner probably won't trust you by this point. And even though some of you maybe haven't gone as far as, certainly not as bad as us, but as far as the full-on contempt, we don't see contempt in every relationship we work with, of course not. But the stonewalling in all of yours?
Oh, even eye rolling, honey, is contempt.
Oh, okay. I'm thinking way bigger though. So we'll call it severe contempt. We don't see all. Yeah, like my point is that the stonewalling and the shutting down is happening in some form. And I know that I'm connecting it to things like hiding and filtering who you are, things like that. But I think it's really important for people to understand. When you start engaging with the horseman, you are literally just, you're pushing yourself all the way down.
And remember,
Tailspin out of control.
that was the key. When you're engaging with the horseman, that means you're not engaging with your spouse.
Oh, I love that line. Good thinking. Do you teach that in your course?
I just came up with it right here on the spot.
Oh my
because
gosh.
You just said when you're engaging with the horseman.
Yeah.
I had a visual of literally the horsemen engaging with each other, actually.
We're so good at stuff like that, guys. We're so good at stuff like that.
Marriages.
Yeah, that's right. It's like when I say, if you're defending yourself, you're not protecting your wife, guys. And defense is the first horseman, right? So we can make our own little slogans.
I like that you number the horsemen.
Yeah, it's the first one.
Sell this to the Gottmans.
Sell us to the Gottmans.
John and Julie Gottman, if you hear this, we have something to sell you.
Okay, guys. Hope you got a lot of value, guys. We're looking forward to continue to bring a ton more value to you. Please download this episode. Share the podcast.
With
everywhere.
John and Julie Gottman, please.
And everyone.
And everyone else.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.